Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled, "Entitled Neighbor Thinks Street Parking is Only His. Karma Response." This happened last night / this morning, and I really love it when karma steps in. Also, I am pregnant and easily irritated, so I will fully acknowledge this is a small case of entitled behavior that does not have a huge impact on daily life. We live in a residential neighborhood with single-family homes without driveways and street parking. For the most part, people tend to park in front of their own house, but it is street parking, so no one has any right to any spot, and sometimes you just have to park wherever you can. It's not usually a problem. 99% of the time we can find a spot on our block, and usually it is right in front of our house. It is one of those courtesy things in the neighborhood. Our next door neighbors to the left have been a bit annoying with their parking habits. Apparently there are birds in the trees in front of their house that poop on their vehicles. They have a pickup truck and an SUV. So when they park, they tend to pull up the front car farther and basically sit almost right on our bumper to get more of that vehicle out from under their tree. So far we have been able to get out as our neighbor to the right usually leaves for work before us, so there is lots of room in front of our car. But it is still annoying, as sometimes we have had to do like a 50-point turn to get out. Thank Austin Powers in that shuttle thing, back and forth, inching out. Which, by the way guys, reminds me of my entitled neighbor back in Europe, where I've had to do the most annoying maneuvers to get out of our damn small parking spot. Yesterday they went farther though. The husband got home around 2 p.m. and there were 2 spots open in front of our houses. His wife's vehicle wasn't home yet and neither was my husband's. He parked in the middle of the 2 spots, effectively taking both of them. My husband got home at 5 p.m. and parked a block away, came in and remarked, "Wow, what a crap parking job the neighbor did." About half an hour later we see his wife pull up. He goes out and moved his truck up so it is in front of our house, and she parks behind him. He saved the spot for her and both were now parked away from the bird poop tree. Now again, it is street parking, so we don't own the spot in front of our house, but that doesn't mean it is okay to park like an a-hole to save your wife a spot. It is first come first served. Also, my husband has a ton of heavy tools and equipment he has to unload after work, and I am pregnant with a toddler and sometimes groceries and diaper bag to carry, so while it is not really a big deal to have to park a block or 2 away just by luck, it is definitely an inconvenience that makes me a little mad when they purposely block the spot in front of our house. This morning, parking karma stepped in. My husband was on the front porch having his morning coffee when the husband comes out and gets in his truck to leave for work. Apparently he hit the gas a little hard while in reverse and he smashed into his wife's SUV. I guess it would have been better if her vehicle was parked elsewhere. Side note, my husband noticed yesterday as well that the neighbor's truck has FU keyed into the driver's side door. Not sure the story behind it, but I'm gonna guess some type of road rage or parking rage incident. And yeah, ripe stars, I would say this is a classic case of karma strikes back. And by the way guys, I would love to hear from you. Are you interested in stories about karma? AKA stupid people doing stupid things and then getting what they deserve. We could name that category r/karma stories or something, and I think it could be interesting. Please let me know what you think about that. And the next one is titled, "HOA destroyed my life and took my home." And by the way guys, since this is a true story, I did change the names just to protect the privacy of the people involved. Anyway, today I will tell you the story of Sandra Lockhart. Sandra has been fighting a never-ending battle with her HOA, which almost felt like a black hole that was impossible to escape. And after a long battle, she received a shocking document. an eviction notice. And yes guys, nowadays, as you all might know, it is almost impossible to buy a house that is not part of an HOA. Those who have never lived in one need to understand what can happen once you sign the documents. Essentially, you could call it signing a deal with the devil. While most HOAs are respected for keeping community spaces maintained, swimming pools safe, and lawns up to snuff, there is a growing tension over how debts are collected when homeowners fall behind or simply fail to understand a fine or fee owed. According to the CAI, which is, as far as I know, the Community Associations Institute, 6 states have some type of ombudsman to help educate and facilitate those discussions. Several states require mediation before a lawsuit can even be filed. Georgia is not one of them. This means Georgia is one of the worst states when it comes to living in an HOA. Sandra Lockhart said she learned that the hard way. In 2010, Lockhart became more and more upset with her HOA's billing process. Feeling ignored, she decided to take a stand and refused to pay her dues, which were about $500 that year. Instead of getting a meeting to work out the problem, she got letters from a law firm hired to collect on the debt. When the Mountain Ford HOA in Hillsborough County had a judgment to foreclose on her house to pay off her debt, she realized this was not a fight she could win. She agreed to pay the debt, which had grown through court costs and attorney fees to about $2,500. I went and title pawned my car, walked in and paid them the $2,500, and when I walked out, I said, "This is all I owe, right?" "Yes," Lockhart recalled asking. But a few months after that conversation, Lockhart said she received another bill for about $4,000. She said she called the law firm, emailed her HOA board president, and sent letters trying to figure out why. All Lockhart said she got in return were cryptic financial statements with dates and amounts that, to her, didn't make sense. And then here comes the next set of letters, and now it is up to $6,500, Lockhart said. Lockhart later learned there were post-judgment legal fees and an 18% back interest. The payments she had made for subsequent HOA dues were credited to her past due bills, not the current assessments. So even after paying close to $10,000 in 4 years, she was still somehow behind on her dues. Lockhart said it was a black hole she could not escape. And then came the most shocking letter of all, an eviction notice. The house she had lived in for 15 years now belonged to her HOA. When you lose your home, that is hard, said Lockhart, fighting back the tears. But sadness quickly turned to anger when she realized the HOA had purchased her home through foreclosure for $2.21 a year before she was evicted. Lockhart said not only did the HOA accept her dues payment on a home she apparently didn't own, but it also allowed Lockhart to make another $4,800 in payments before her eviction. However, attorney Robert Roost, who has helped craft Georgia's HOA laws since the 1980s, said while Lockhart's story is tragic, it is a tragedy of her own making. He says legally it was up to Lockhart to know that her home had been sold and that she no longer owed the debt, and since it was paid voluntarily, no one has to pay her back. And by the way guys, just to quickly chip in here, that line, since she paid voluntarily, no one has to pay her back, that sounds like if the mafia puts a gun to your head and you pay voluntarily, then obviously they cannot be prosecuted and they don't have to pay you back anything. Seriously, that didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Anyway, it doesn't happen in a back room with blue smoke and mirrors, he explained, discussing Georgia's HOA foreclosure process. Most people know if you default on a loan, the bank can foreclose, but that property is also assurance anyone living in a homeowners association pays their dues. In Georgia, the HOA can get a lien on your home and then file for foreclosure as soon as the homeowner owes $2,000. Roost said it can take 4 years to accrue that much debt and win a judicial foreclosure. Along the way, the homeowner receives letters alerting them to what is owed. They have the opportunity to appear in court and dispute the debt, and even after the HOA wins the case, there is a title search, the foreclosure is advertised for a month in the local newspaper, and they are served notice twice before the sale. They brought this on because they ignored all of the requests to pay. They ignored, if you don't pay, we are going to sue you. They didn't show up for trial most times, Roost explained. Lockhart admits she was dealing with other problems in her life at the time and never did go to court on the matter. But Rebecca Law, a homeowner in Douglas County, did try to fight the HOA claims against her. When they garnished my bank account, I was unemployed, Law said. Law filed bankruptcy to get a handle on her debt, but when it felt like the only people getting paid were the lawyers and bankruptcy trustees, she decided to work out a payment plan through her board directly. Her debt was a mix of assessments and maintenance violations, and somewhere along the way, she had questions about why the HOA was charging certain fees. Law says she asked questions, but no one cared to give any answers. When the HOA filed a lawsuit against her to collect, she disputed the debt. Among her questions was why she was being charged late fees for a payment she clearly kept trying to make. The envelope was going to the HOA's address but kept being returned for no reason. Court records say Law's dispute arrived one day too late to be considered, but Law says there is more to that ruling. Law says the first time she tried to file, the documents were denied because they were scanned copies, not the original. Law was living out of town and had faxed the response to her niece for help. She then had the documents delivered overnight with guaranteed delivery. She says it was not her first response but answers to follow-up questions that arrived late. And actually, they did not arrive at all according to Law. She did not even try at that point to respond because it felt like the HOA's attorney was using tactics of discouragement knowing she couldn't afford one of her own. After she lost the case, she was told to mail her settlement payment of $4,127 to that exact same address as before. This time, the checks did not come back. "Where is the fairness in that process?" she asked. Attorney Roost said we have to evaluate fairness not just in the eyes of the homeowner, but also the entire HOA community. While it is portrayed as cold and you are taking advantage of the homeowner, it is the exact opposite. People who don't pay their assessments are having everybody else in the community subsidize them, Roost said. Georgia law fiercely protects an HOA's right to collect what is owed, but neither of these women deny their debt. What they do have a problem with is the inability to mediate and ask questions when a disagreement arises. CAI, which lobbies for legislation to protect the rights of community associations, says it prefers some type of dispute resolution to costly litigation and made it a legislative priority in 2019. Several states with ombudsman or dispute resolution options don't cover arguments over assessments, but Lockhart and Law say that was never at the heart of their complaints. "A lot of times people cannot afford to fight. They just have to walk away," said Law, who after saving her home from foreclosure decided to move away and put the house on the market. "I love this house," she said. "I just have not felt like I own the home because of the HOA." As for Lockhart, the HOA sold the house to an employee involved in her foreclosure. According to public documents, Legacy Properties LLC, a company that did not legally exist at the time, bought the house for $1 and a portion of the profits. The woman behind the LLC also reactivated her real estate license and sold the home to a new family 7 months later. The HOA and law firm recouped their money, the LLC likely made some, but Lockhart ended up homeless, losing tens of thousands of dollars in equity. The courts have said there is no legitimate reason for not paying. "If you believe the association has done you wrong, then sue the association," said Roost, reinforcing the order of events. Pay and then sue. And yeah guys, unfortunately for Mrs. Lockhart in this story, there is no happy ending, and I gotta say, this story, more than almost any other HOA story we have ever read, should serve as a real warning to everybody who considers buying a house in an HOA community. This doesn't mean that there aren't any positive HOAs around the United States, however, you really have to be aware of the risks involved. And by the way, if you have watched until here, I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance, it really helps me tremendously. And the next one was posted by user OneTagGurung1 on our own subreddit r/ripe stories. It has nothing to do with neighbors, but just consider this as a little bonus story, and it is titled How to Properly Quit a Job. So, Ripe and Ripe family, as I said on one of Ripe's more recent videos, I am posting the story of the events leading up to and me actually quitting my job. It's not any sort of revenge yet unless my old boss acts on what I personally think should be done, but who knows if he will do that. So first, a little backstory about me. I'm a veteran, and then after getting out of the military immediately went into defense contracting, decided I wasn't getting paid enough to almost get blown up on a weekly basis and shot at, so I came back to the States. I waited about 5 months to start another job to decompress and such, and then jumped into my first true civilian job. And even though all this stuff happened, I am still very thankful to my old boss for taking me on for this job and letting me learn about being an electrician. This is not complaining about him, but about the people I worked with in the field. So the job, installing generators, started off alright. The first few days was just doing manual labor, like laying a concrete pad and putting up PVC pipes to run wire through. Then, about a week into the job, I was allowed, under close supervision, to actually wire up a generator. We soon realized I have a knack for this type of thing, so my training quickly progressed. Then, as time went on, the guy who runs the schedule, we will call him Richard, decided the helpers needed to be rotated around the LED installers to get well-rounded with working with others. No problem, then the issues started. The next week I was working with a guy, let's call him Ben. Now Ben knows his stuff when it comes to generators, there's no doubt there, but he was asking me about my history in the military and I gave him a few details. What my job was, some of the training I did and the various bases I got stationed at. And then Ben started saying I was lying, I didn't do all that because a cop in the Air Force doesn't need to shoot an M4, doesn't need to do any special training such and such. So I stopped defending myself and just let him go on because I have nothing to prove to him. Well, later on as we are working, he decides he likes working with me because I get my job done right in a timely manner, unlike the other helper who was hired when I was. I'm like, cool, people are starting to notice my work ethic, but he also started talking crap about every other LED installer. It was then that I realized I would rather not work with him at all. I don't want to be sucked into all the workplace drama and the pettiness. So I dealt with him for a few weeks and then I started working with a guy we will call Mike. Now, I really like Mike. I don't have much to say about him other than he is a bit cocky, but he knows absolutely everything about this job and taught me a lot. And we are both from the same local area in the Midwest, so we got along great. He went so far as to request me to be his permanent helper since his other helper was actually about to become a LED installer. I thought all was good until they decided to switch the teams again, and then comes in, let's call him Raul. Raul is a mostly competent electrician. His big falling, which is no reason of his own, is that he speaks broken English due to immigrating a few years ago from a Latin country. But we can communicate well enough to get the job done. Our first job of the week has no electrical work, we just built a platform so an electrical box could be accessed because it was so high up due to a flood level. But the next day, oh buddy, Raul and I get to the job site, I immediately start doing my job, get the concrete pad put down, get the generator on, get it bolted down, and then go see what Raul needs. He gives me a laundry list, but I have no problems helping him because it is my job and we are waiting on the power company to pull the power to the house so we can get to work. Fast forward about 25 minutes, I've had my smoke and water break and the power was just turned off. So I start working on the panel box in the garage, separating wires and such, and Paul keeps interrupting me to go grab him stuff while he is on his phone, drinking his coffee and just being lazy. I just hold my tongue, get his stuff and get back to work. Finally, Raul decides it is time for him to start working, so he starts doing his thing, and then as I am 5 minutes away from finishing, he comes in and berates me for not being done yet and kicks me out of the panel so he could make a pre-existing hole bigger. I'm annoyed by this point, so I offer no help, but standing by in case he asks something. So how does he go about expanding this hole? Does he take a drill bit made for cutting big holes in metal, known as a cobalt? Does he take a Dremel tool to just expand it? Or does he do the most dangerous thing I've ever seen someone do in the civilian world and take a sawzall and start cutting slits into this hole? Now that is not the dangerous part, just using a sawzall, but he was using a wood blade, bends the blade like an idiot, bent it back into a roughly straight shape and then cuts up and loses traction in the hole, skating up and almost destroying the breaker bar in the panel box, which is bad news bears. And then he says F it and starts hammering these slits in. He is happy with the size and then proceeds to shove a threaded PVC pipe through it, meanwhile destroying the threads. It took me 20 minutes to get a lock ring and bushing on because it had no threads, and Raoul put a giant washer on the panel to hide his nasty work. But not before I took a picture. It was then I decided I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be there when he injures himself or my name to be associated with this quality of work. So that night I called Richard and sent him the pictures of the work and told him I wanna be on a different crew. He said he'll see what he can do, but I won't be moved until next week. I told him I'm not going to go to work with someone who is that unsafe, and if I didn't get moved then I will walk out of work and will continue to do that until I get moved. So I didn't work the last 2 days of that week. I quit that weekend and told the boss not to tell anyone. I wanted to quit to Richard's face. So I did something I always wanted to do. I woke up at 4:30 AM, was in work at 6:30 AM. Richard started calling me a little witch and everything, so I took off my shirt, handed it to him and walked out in an undershirt that I had taped F you to the back. Then I went into the office and told my boss the reason I quit is I didn't get paid enough to deal with that crap, gaslighted everyone I thought deserved to be gaslit, praised everyone I thought deserved to be praised, told him what I personally should be changed, shook his hand and thanked him for giving me the opportunity to work when I had no experience, and then walked out. So I am hoping some people get demoted, some promoted, and they figure out that once a good crew is formed, don't mess it up. So thank you very much for posting this awesome story, and I gotta admit that has to be one of the most epic quitting a job stories I have ever read on Reddit. And guys, if you have any stories of your own to share, please head on over to r/ripestories on Reddit to post your own story there. And in case it is an interesting story, I might read it in a video. Currently, the stories that I need the most are usually revenge stories, neighbor stories, and HOA related stories. Of course, I will also read other stories, but due to the way YouTube is structured right now in regards to the algorithm, I gotta be a little bit careful in regards to what I read in each video. Thank you so much for your daily support and for your understanding. I hope you have an amazing day, and I see you again tomorrow.